Hey guys, Maniac here with GameAccess.net. Actually it's from the point where I'm starting to shoot this, it's a couple hours away from when the next Alan Wake game is going to get released to the Xbox Live Marketplace, which is awesome because I'm heavily, really looking forward to it. I've been looking forward to it for quite a while. Heck, I've been looking forward to it since I finished the game a couple days after it got released. So, I wanted to do a quick video for some of you guys, kind of like I guess you would say it's like a sister video to the commentary that I did earlier and is already up on the YouTube channel, about what was cut from Alan Wake. Now, Alan Wake was in development for 5 years by Remedy. It was started, I believe heavy work on it started around 2005. It was released in 2010. Since then, a lot of the game actually got changed, especially some of the stuff that we saw in initial trailers and stuff like that. Now, Remedy isn't usually like, let's say, there wasn't exactly like a leak. I've done a very similar video with Duke Nukem Forever, of course, where I talked about what got cut from that game. But usually all the information that I got from the assets and stuff like that was from probably the leaked stuff right after the game, the 3D Realm shut down. In this case, actually, a lot of the stuff that I know actually has come from behind-the-scenes documentaries, game commentary, and of course, this book, Alan Wake Illuminated. This is a hardcover book published by Prima. It's a limited edition. I don't know if Prima actually sold this thing separately, but the way I got it was, if I could find it, I have it here somewhere. At least I thought I did. Oh, here it is. This right here. It was bundled with the strategy guide. This is where I was able to find it. It's a fantastic book which actually details a lot of the stuff that went on with the development of the game. Talks about what was cut, what was some of the original designs for some of the episodes, and the history of Remedy. It's a really, really fascinating book, and if you can find it somewhere, I certainly recommend picking it up the bundle with the strategy guide. Even the strategy guide's fantastic. It was very well made also. The thing I wanted to start with was, well, what was going to be going on with some of the original design of the game? Now, everyone kind of knows by this point that Alan Wake was supposed to originally be an open world game. That's no secret. People have talked about that. Some of the first live demos we saw of it were all using the open world gameplay. In particular, the Intel 2006 demo, which was, of course, really, really fantastic and really well made. So, it's no secret if I would tell you that. It's like no big behind-the-scenes stuff. But some of the cool stuff, actually, that would have been included had they decided to go the real world, the open world environments, was really interesting. And it's kind of sad that they decided to cut some of these things. It would have been nice to, even if they decided to, to cut linearity and make the game linear, some of these things that they had built. But really, when you think about it, there was no place to put these things once the real-world aspects got cut. One of those things was actually going to be a whole new revamp of what Bright Falls was going to be, or I should say the old revamp of what the original look of Bright Falls was going to be. Now, obviously, a lot of Bright Falls, of course, just got updated, as we saw. It went through a few revisions. But one of the things that was cool that I miss was that there would have been a museum, which is not in Bright Falls. And the cool thing about the museum was that you could go in there and you could check out what the history of the town was. And you could also check out you could interact with the objects. You could interact with some of the things. In fact, actually, and this is something that they were really teasing in the book, was that there were going to be interactive physics objects in the game, similar, I guess you would say, to how it was used in L.A. Noire. You could pick up objects and stuff like that. Well, there was one object that they were detailing. I don't know how far along they got with this, but it actually did make it in the game. They left the object in the game. It's just not usable. Was they had a little ball puzzle set up where you could actually take a puzzle and you could move it around to manipulate the ball to show the physics engine. And that was going to be in the museum. When that whole feature got cut, they removed those kind of puzzles, but the ball puzzle actually did make it in the game. And the book even says, try to find it. Well, I did find it. If you want to know what that ball puzzle looked like, it's in one of the patient's rooms in Hartman's cabin. If you look through some of the patient rooms in Hartman's cabin, you'll see some fun little decors and some of it. And the ball puzzle is in one of those rooms. So just look for a little ball puzzle, you'll find it. That was originally going to be in the Bright Falls Museum. Now, Other things that were going to be featured in the open world aspect of the game were going to be, I specifically actually love this, I'm really sad it got cut, was a test track, like a dirt test track that was going to look like a, I guess you would make it look like it was like an abandoned, I guess you would say like something that somebody had built because cars had driven on it in like the middle of nowhere. And somebody put bleachers there so that you could drive the car around this dirt road and do time trials on it. As far as I know, there was like no way to race anyone else. That wasn't written into the thing. But I guess they figured that since they were going to be using an open world environment, that it merited having a track, so that whenever you took cars or something like that, you could always run whatever cars you were just obtaining through the test track, which was kind of a cool concept. Really, there wasn't much to it, and I think that's probably why they cut it, is other than the fact it was there because it just needed to be there. But I saw the pictures of it. I thought it was really visually interesting, and I'm kind of sad that it had to go. But really, again, they had no point for it. You don't even really explore Bright Falls during the day. Just some of the wilderness. So that's kind of, it was kind of disappointing, but again, there was nowhere to put it. Other things that they had used and it decided to cut would have included probably, they had used older versions of the parks, the museums. You would have been able to interact with the town and stuff like that. So some of that stuff was cut. It's kind of disappointing. But what was, since I've been talking about what the original open world aspects of the game was, what was the original stories like going to be involved with? Well, that's kind of a mixed bag, because the whole thing was that the game's story was always constantly evolving. And when the Steam store was always constantly evolving, there was a lot of, there's some things that basically are cut and they're considered not canonical anymore because they decided not to do it. But then there's some stuff that got cut, which is still considered canonical because some of the concepts ended up in like other Alan Wake material, in particular the Alan Wake files, which was included with the limited edition of the Xbox 360 version of the game. If you have that book, let me tell you, there's a lot of information in there that was not covered in the Alan Wake game, and trust me, it's all considered canonical. It's a good read. And what was particularly interesting about some of those aspects were, well, I guess what I should do is I should start talking about like what the original design document was for the game, or what the original story was going to be of the game. The original design document of the game would have involved that Alan Wake had been a successful writer who, again, was having problems with sleep. He was having sleep apnea and stuff like this. All these problems, and the reason why was because his girlfriend, Alice, was dead. And according to what I was reading, she had died in a car accident before the game had even started. His girlfriend was his muse. And with her death, he was unable to write. So he goes to Hartman's clinic with interest in, I guess, probably, just trying to be able to sleep again. It was a sleep clinic. And he meets a woman who is Hartman's wife, who looks identical to his girlfriend, his dead girlfriend. And thought that was quite interesting, and he starts writing about her, but the stories that he's writing are not dreams. He's not dreaming, he's not having dreams. He's not writing about dreams anymore. He's having nightmares now, and he's writing about his nightmares, and the nightmares are what's coming to life. In it, there would have been cool aspects involving what the original versions of the Taken would have looked like. I remember the original versions of the Taken, as we saw, would have involved like men in raincoats and stuff like that. That's how we saw them in the original E3 2005 demo. The other things that we saw were, at least I saw, initial drawings of like, I would compare them very similar to how some of the mystical splicers had looked in the original BioShock, where especially the ones that lived in the underground forests and stuff like that, were forests and stuff like that, where they chose to wear masks that looked like bark and long flowing cloth coats and stuff like that. The original ideas for the Taken was that they were supposed to be very, very inspired by nature, almost like wood spirits or something like that, or almost like indigenous people. They cut that, and I don't know, there was no listing as to why they cut it, but I think probably BioShock might have had something to do with it, but that's just my opinion. Because those characters were very similar to what they looked like in BioShock, so That was there would have been a similarity with that. Also, they were talking about stuff like involving elemental characters and stuff like that, whereas you have like spirits instead of. And to take it in the full version of the game, look, very almost like a black mist or like a smoke covered around their bodies. This kind of also played with the concept that they might have been have fields of electricity or fields of water or fields of fire kind of around them. Like they'd have these different types of elemental powers and stuff like that, which was kind of interesting. But I decided, I figured that what they actually did decide to release instead was a better concept of the game. So there was that too. Also, the original concept of what they were going to use the lighthouse for was going to be different. Now, in the final version of the game, the first scene in the game, and I've talked about this in the commentary, is Alan going for the lighthouse. Now, that was something that was prevalent in all the trailers. That was something that was prevalent in pretty much a lot of the promotional material, that Alan was going to be heading out to a lighthouse, and he, in the course of heading to that lighthouse, he'd be ambushed by Taken, his enemies. And the reason, of course, why he'd go for that lighthouse was going to be because it's night, he's not safe at night. These are creatures that only exist at night, and a lighthouse is always going to be bright. It's always going to have light in it, so it's like the perfect place to stay for safety reasons and stuff like that. So it made a lot of sense that he'd go there. Of course, you could, by that logic, you could basically, I don't know, stay at the power plant or something like that in a room full of strung-out Christmas lights that don't need to be replaced, that sort of thing. And so that would work too. So I think that's kind of why they cut it. But the original concept was that Alan was going to use it, and he was going to be racing towards it with Barry, actually. So an original concept of what they were going to do with the lighthouse was that a level was going to be constructed. And I don't know exactly if it shares a level with something else, but I specifically remember reading a concept of a level where Alan and Barry were going to be in a seaplane that was being driven by a pilot. They were looking for something. I think they were going to be looking for a second cabin, which was not featured in the game at all. So this was just a concept for an idea of a level. They were going to be looking for an identical cabin to what Zane's cabin was going to be. And over the course of the flight, the pilot gets taken, and Barry and Alan have to bolt. They bolt from there. Barry's able to get away in a boat, like a little paddle boat, and Alan has to break, and they both break for the lighthouse just to get to a safe area to spend the night, basically. Made for a really tense sequence. Kind of sad it was cut, but in that respect, it's like with everything, they probably cut it for pacing or for time or something like that. And of course, there was nothing in the final version of the game about a second cabin or about the possibility of a second cabin. So there was that too. I don't think they would have been able. The story that they were going for, there was just nowhere to put it. So there was all that. So other things that were cut from the game, which are not considered canonical anymore, were, since we're on the subject of it, Alan and Barry were going to be, well, there was the seaplane level. There was also going to be concepts of a forest fire, actually. Remedy was very interested in because they had the forest and everything else, and I know a lot of people online have been talking about this since the game came out. Why didn't you just light the woods on fire? Well, I hate to break this to you. For survival experts, they know the answer to this. It's not a good idea to light a forest on fire that you're in. Why? Because it's not safe. One, the forest is on fire. Two, when a forest is on fire, there's two things that happen other than the forest being on fire. One, there's smoke. You could choke from the smoke. Two, it takes out the oxygen. You'll choke from suffocation. And of course, the third one, which is the obvious one, you'll burn to death. Lighting a forest on fire is not a good idea. It's a very hazardous environment. But the Alan Wake engine, at least as far as I could tell from pictures, could do fire. And they did have the idea that a earthquake would cause a forest fire that Alan would have to make his way out of. And it ranged from all these kind of ideas, very similar, very cinematic concepts that they had, and involving Alan trying to get through the forest fire, having to get one of those chairlift gondolas. That would be, I guess you would say, like a cable car. I guess the analog here would be like a cable car, where you'd be suspended over, like I guess you would say, like a mountain peak, and you need to get in the car, which was a fully enclosed cart, to get up the mountain to safety, or down the mountain, or something like that. But you'd use it to get up to safety, and as Alan's fighting his way through, he's attacked and stuff like that, and the cable car is attacked and all that other stuff. So it was a really cinematic moment, but again, I guess they just couldn't fit it. And plus, the level took place during the day. So having the concept of having taken in it was not you know, you couldn't really have taken in it if it's during the daytime. Daytime Alan would be relatively safe unless he goes in like some dark tunnel or something like that. So after all that said, what else was cut from the game? There is a lot of canonical stuff involving. Oh, actually, no, I take it back. One of the other non-canonical things were that they were going to be dealing with UFOs. And if you look really closely in some of the Alan Wake engine, I guess you would say the Alan Wake engine tool sets that are seen in some of the Alan Wake documentary videos, which are on the Xbox 360 Special Edition disc, you'll find tool things for crop circles and stuff like that. And the reason why was because actually they did tease with the idea of maybe bringing in a UFO, that maybe UFOs or aliens were involved with some of these problems, but that all got cut out. But it was kind of interesting. I think maybe once or twice you might, if you look really close, there might be like a crop circle or something off a peak, but I didn't see anything like that. But I think some people were saying that they saw it. But it's just left at that. There are no aliens in the final version of the game. The other interesting sci-fi thing that they were going to go for was involving a institute. Oh gosh, what is that institute called? I want to make sure I got the name right, so give me a second on this one. But basically, there was going to be a scientific institute that had built a particle accelerator, which looked like a giant cyclotron. And for those physicists, of course, know what a cyclotron is. It's a big tube that you use to smash atoms and to bombard atoms with other particles and stuff like that, and you use it to create elements, and you use it to do that stuff. CERN has a really big one. And that they wanted to have, oh yes, the Moorcock Institute. I'm sorry, the Moorcock Institute. And the reason why people who play the game are familiar with that name, that they built this particle accelerator, and that the Moorcock Institute was using it to, like, I don't know, discover the secrets of the universe or something like that. Why else would you have something like that unless you're Iron Man and trying to build a new element to power the generator on your shirt? But they were going to use it, and that was going to be the problem, and that was what was going to be causing all these supernatural problems. Was going to be sci-fi based. Now, they kept the Moorcock Institute reference, and they took out the particle accelerator. So the particle accelerator, which was going to be part of the landscape of Bright Falls, it was going to be built into one of the mountains. You would have seen it, half of it or a part of it protruding from one of the mountains. Was cut. They took it out, and they changed part of the reasonings why. But the Moorcock Institute stayed because it's in an episode of Night Springs. So the guy who worked on the quantum suicide was from that institute, so they left the reference into that. So since I'm kind of still talking about, like I said, some of this stuff was like, you know, some of these ideas were just like early ideas. They were test ideas. So don't take these like, oh, they were going to go this originally and then they changed their mind and they tossed them. Like I said, some of these were just like crazy ideas. Like there was going to be a train sequence. Like Alan was going to be on a train. Like, and by the train I mean like a not a passenger train, like one of those cargo trains and stuff like that. And he was going to have to fight his way on a train. Made for an interesting segment as it was going through the through the forest, but that's not in the game either. And there's, like I said, I don't think anybody really misses it. But I did, of course, if there was one reference to the train, I'm sure it was probably that opening sequence where you come into Bright Falls for the first time and you see the train go through the bridge. That was a beautiful shot. So if, like I said, if that contributed to maybe having that train in there or something like that, then thank you, because it really was an interesting bit for me. Other concepts, I guess, like I said, they kept changing the concept of what Barbara Jagger was going to be, and they also changed the concept of like the look of the bird-like cabin. The whole backstory behind Barbara Jagger was that it was kind of like a old spook story. I guess it's like a myth about a old woman in black clothes, like a funeral dress or something like that, and she basically travels in a house. She lives in a house that's literally on legs, and the reason why is because it's on legs is because it walks around. So it's like bird legs, and I guess that's a famous, just a famous spook story kind of thing. I've never really heard it because I live in the United States, but I'm sure internationally people have heard that story before. I think it's called Baba Yaga or something like that. I've heard Sam Lake reference it on several times. So the whole reasoning behind I guess you would say some of the inspiration behind Barbara Jagger and the Bird Lake Cabin was based upon that. Made for very interesting stuff. I'm glad what they finalized it with. You know, the concept of the cabin getting up and walking around would have been kind of silly. So you know, I don't count me on that. Again, this is just my opinion. So originally it was kind of interesting. I guess you would say, was she an enemy? Was she a friend? That was certainly teased quite a bit. So after all that said, what were some of the canonical stuff that got cut from the game? Now, like I said, some of this stuff ended up in the Alan Wake files, and because it's in the Alan Wake files, it is considered canonical. This is absolutely true. They were going to do a lot more with Agent Nightingale. I know a lot of people were probably thinking, like, Nightingale, he probably should have been in the game a bit longer. And I agree with you. I think that we should have seen more of Nightingale. We should have probably heard more of Nightingale, but he worked well in what he had, in the scenes that he had in the game. But we never really hear like things like what's his reasoning, what's his backstory. We hear a little bit about what he did, but we don't know exactly what's his motivation. We never find that out. Well, Clay Stewart, who was also had a brief cameo in the game, was also another character that had a backstory that was fleshed out. Now, for those of you who have seen my commentary, you know who Clay Stewart is. He's a guy in a, I guess you would say he's wearing one of those jock jackets in the very early portion of Alan's Nightmare. As Alan is making his way, running from a tornado, trying to get into the cabin for safety, Clay Stewart is there, a man saying, Alan, it's me, Clay Stewart, get in the cabin, get in the cabin. When I first played that sequence, I thought, is that like an old friend of his or something like that? And the truth is, Alan Wake never met Clay Stewart. They were never friends. They were never colleagues. Clay Stewart and him never met. In fact, actually, to Alan, I'm sure he assumed Clay Stewart was just a figment of his dream. In reality, Clay Stewart was a real man, is a real man. And he's a dreamer just like Alan Wake was. And Clay Stewart, just like Alan, had been having the same nightmares. That nightmare they had been having night after night after night. It always ended differently, I guess. One night Alan would die, one night he'd save Alan, one night. And basically one of them would die, one of them would wake up. Clay Stewart for years was having this dream. And he detailed it in the Alan Wake files that he had no idea who the man was. And then he watched an interview with Alan Wake on television right after he published one of his books. And he's like, that's the man of my dreams who I don't know who it is, but his mannerisms, his appearance, and his voice are identical to what I've seen. That's not possible. I've never seen this man before. How can I be dreaming about him? And he became kind of like you would say, kind of like a Mulder, basically, type character, a Fox Mulder type character, where he believed in all this stuff, trying to get to the bottom of what this supernatural thing was. At the cost of basically his marriage and I thought it made for a very interesting story. And the cool thing was that Nightingale's story was very similar to Stewart's, in that from the fleshed out story that I've been able to figure out was that we know that Nightingale lost a partner. We also know that Nightingale had been fired from the FBI, or had resigned from the FBI. So his credentials were not valid, which is why he never showed them to Breaker. He kept flashing his badge, but it wasn't valid. So the cool thing about all that was that originally we were supposed to be able to play as the Agent Nightingale. We were supposed to play as him. And we were supposed to see some of the stuff that he had been able to see, like particularly the loss of his partner. We were supposed to play that. Some of that is in the original design documents of the game. Because it got cut and because Nightingale is not playable, it basically got alluded to in backstory in the Alan Wake files. But the reason why he was so fascinated and obsessed with Wake was because he was having the dreams too. And he was also having problems with the Dark Presence. He was literally, the Dark Presence was manifesting itself to him, and he was concerned it had caused the loss of his partner, that he blamed the Dark Presence for the loss of his partner. Now, you can't really blame some kind of supernatural entity for something. It's kind of silly. So, because Nightingale, to be perfectly honest, is a sane guy. You have to blame someone for something, for some kind of loss. And because he realized that he was dreaming about Wake, and he believed that Wake was the person responsible for all this, incorrectly, of course, but not bad, not like, it was like he had a good heart with him, but it was in the wrong place. And he was just so drunk and so angry that he couldn't see past the veil. So he goes missing at the end of the first Alan Wake game. Again, spoilers. Clay Stewart follows Nightingale's trail trying to track down Wake, who had gone missing after the events of the first game. Again, people know that. People have played Alan Wake. He found Nightingale's records. And the reason why is because if you look in the Majestic, when you're in the Majestic in the last episode, you can see that one of the vents was left closed. Nightingale had stuffed him in his vent. Clay Stewart stayed in Nightingale's room intentionally, looked in the vent, and found all of his files, and that's what he published. So it was a really cool bit. And again, that's why I said that's what the backstory is with Nightingale. That's what the backstory is with Stewart. It's teased in the game, but they did make it canonical that was what they were going to do with them. I like that a lot. So again, that's cut. They might change it, they might not change it, I don't know. Also, other cool bits about it would have involved, I don't know. I don't think they were ever... Tom the Diver, for example, I'm sorry, Thomas Zane, Cynthia Weaver, and stuff like that. As far as I know, those guys never really changed that much. At least not, I didn't see anything. Tom was always going to be like this kind of cross between a spaceman and a diver. Or, it had happened to him before and stuff like that. And kind of some of the characters were very interesting. My favorite bit that was also cut. And by the way, this is maybe canonical, maybe not canonical. My favorite part of the game is involving the stage in episode 4, where Barry and Alan are trying to make it to the house, to the Anderson farmhouse for safety. And as they're trying to make their way to the house, they come across the stage that they had built for, just for a big concert, because these guys are rock legends. Over the court, right as they make it to the stage, they're being chased by Taken. A bolt of lightning hits the top of the stage and basically turns everything on, all the gizmos, all the gadgets, all the music, all the fireworks, everything just engages itself. It's like a jump start or something. When all the pyrotechnics and stuff start going off, including the flame effects, it starts injuring and killing the Taken, and they decide to stand their ground there for as long as they can. It's a great moment, but it's kind of, when you think about it, a little bit coincidental that bolt of lightning would hit that stage and do all that luck to them. And the game's original reasoning why was because, I don't know if you guys, it's like you had Thor and you had Loki. Oh god, no. I'm sorry, Thor and Odin, which were both named after Greek gods, and the possibility would have existed more likely that they had actually really been Greek gods, or with the very least reincarnations of those original Greek gods. And that the Thor, which is the god of thunder, had actually the power to conjure lightning. I'm sure you've seen with that hammer all the time. He's going, it's a little squeak hammer, but that they put that in there. That's totally genuine. And had caused that bolt of lightning to hit them just to save Wake's butt. And he did it as like a good gesture towards him to save him when it might have happened. It would have been more overt in the original versions of that it was Thor that was responsible for doing that, but they cut that out. Again, I guess they were trying to go for more of an unknown supernatural concept as opposed to a overt supernatural concept. So that's all I can remember, really. It's like I said, it's a kind of a mix. It's kind of a mixed bag. Like I said, there's some things I wish that they had kept. Some things I'm glad they didn't keep. There would have been more with the plane. That plane crash that you saw in the game, you would have actually seen it crash or something like that. There would have been more of that. They had, so like I said, there was a lot of cool stuff. I'm not saying I'm completely sad that the open world environments were gone completely from the game, but if I had one regret about the game that I didn't like, that I wish they had put in, was I would just have loved to have just been able to go through the town in daylight, at least one segment. To check out, just check out everything during the daytime, because it would have made, because you'd be able to fight through it in episodes 5. You're fighting through it at night, so it's interesting on that respect. But it would have been really cool just to see it during the daytime, to have that juxtaposition between, it's bright and chipper during the daytime, and at night it's literally a war zone. I would have thought that was kind of cool. So, like I said, that's like one thing I wish they had kept. I'm glad like I said, I'm glad the game is linear and everything else, and I know that they decided it was best, and I think it worked well for them not to use the open world environment. But I would have liked to have been able to just go through the town at least once. So that's my take on that. That's kind of some of the things that were cut from Alan Wake. Lord knows exactly what else they were working on that either I've forgotten from the book, or Remedy worked on at least a little bit and didn't even publish yet. So yeah, who knows what else they were talking about. So I'll see you guys online. I'll be picking up Alan Wake's American Nightmare tomorrow morning, or I should say whenever they publish it tomorrow. Last time I heard it was going to be 5 a.m. Eastern. But that's just because that's usually when they normally upload those live games. So hopefully you guys will be playing American Nightmare. I certainly will tomorrow. So thanks for watching, guys. This is Maniac with GameAccess.net. Over and out.